How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 2.
Hello, America. It's Eric Erickson here. I hope you're doing well. The phone number is 877-973-7425 should you wish to be on the program. As always, you can text the word Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777. You can get the live stream, the show notes, the podcast, and a whole lot more. We have economic news out. And I want to talk to you about the economic news. And it depends on which side you're on, whether you can see the effects of tariffs or not. I'm on the side that says tariffs are having an impact. I mean, when you have Caterpillar and John Deere, and now you've got most major retailers out there saying tariffs are having an impact. I think we should take them at their word that tariffs are having an impact. But it's also not having as big an impact. My buddy Justin Hart. Before I get to Justin's tweet, let me just play for you the Rick Santelli clip from this morning, as we got the wholesale prices. The PPI Producer Price Index came out, surprising everybody.
PPI wholesale inflation for August expected to be up 0.3. No. Down 0.1%. Down 0.1. Wow. That would be the first negative number since April of this year, when it was minus 0.2. If you strip out food and energy, we're also expecting up 0.3. It's minus 0.1 as well. Minus 0.1, the same. Last time we had a minus number was April, and we're comping to minus 0.2 in April. And I do want to point out, last month we had up 0.9 on both those variables. They were the highest going back to March of 22. They just were revised slightly lower to 0.7, so 0.7% for each of those in the rearview mirror for July. Now let's look at ex-food, energy, and trade. Finally, as expected, up 0.3, which follows up 0.6 unrevised at this point. Up 0.3 would actually be the smallest, going back to 0 in June of this year. Now the year over year, in my opinion, these are the most important. And boy, I'm surprised. Real progress here. 2.6 on year over year headline. We are expecting 3.3 in the rearview mirror, 3.3. 2.6 will be the lowest since it was 2.4 in June, and it underscores whether it was tariff driven or not. Those little blips seem to be moving back into the sunset. Year over year ex-food energy, 2.8%. That's core 2.8, expecting 3.5. In the rearview mirror, a whopping 3.7. 2.8 would equate to the smallest since June of this year, but that was the smallest going all the way back to April of 24.
In other words, those are a lot of numbers, but basically we've had some deflation in the producer price index. It's gone down. So back to my buddy Justin Hart, who makes a very good point. He says the story goes like this. Trump initiates COVID stimulus. Biden doubled down in a big way. Incomes increased 20%. This created a fake demand spike because everybody's income went up. They could buy more. It was fake demand driven by the money supply. Retailers ordered more stuff. Everybody started hiring, and then inflation hit. Supply and demand at work. The free government money turns off. Inventories soar. People are no longer buying stuff. Demand falls. And only now have companies realized they can't float forever on increased revenue from inflation. So they've got to let people go. And apparently they've been doing this since 2022. Tariffs are not the issue here. Keynesian economics is. Yeah, it is Keynesian economics. He's right. But I would say tariffs are actually part of the problem. Here's my argument on this. When you look underneath, you pull up the hood and you look underneath in the PPI, goods, remember, inflation doesn't apply to services. It applies to tariffs apply to goods, not services. All the goods prices have gone up, and they've gone up because of the tariffs. The companies are saying price increases are because of tariffs. But remember, if you've been a long-time listener to this program, I've told you that we treat tariffs as inflationary, but they're really not. It's a one-time bump. It's not like say you apply a 20% tariff on something. It's not like prices go up 20% every month. No, it's just a one-time bump. And we've seen that bump in the data. We're seeing it in the data now as the August tariffs go into effect in some cases. But services make up 2/3 of the producer price index. Services aren't tariffed, and their prices are collapsing. Significant decline in the price of services. And that gets to Justin's point here. It's not just inventories here. It's that services are now, they were charging so much more because they could, because people had a lot of money from the government. They're having to cut their rates. And now that's going to cause problems with wages too, because they were paying people more money. And now people are either going to have to get wage cuts or they're going to get laid off. We are seeing an effect from tariffs, but also tariffs can only increase prices so much. Mohammed El-Arian is one of the most respected economists on the planet. He was on CNBC talking about this. Listen to this.
There's the exporter, there's the importer, and there's a consumer. And so far, the consumer is carrying the least of the burden. I can tell you what's going on right now in companies is they're going product by product, going through the elasticities, what they think the consumer can absorb in terms of price increase without destroying demand. And they're finding out that they cannot pass through as much of the price increase as they want.
He's right. You can't, just take the Chinese tariffs. You can't pass all of that through to the consumer. So what happens? The manufacturer abroad's got to cut prices. The importer here can only increase some, and they reduce their profit. They reduce their revenue. And so then what happens? You have a compounding effect on wages. Remember, wages were able to go up because there was such a massive influx of government money, and wages could go up. Now, inflation ate a lot of the wages, we know, but wages went up. Well, now they're starting to load people off. They're not going to be able to increase wages as much. This is just basic economics, people. This isn't our stuff. And full disclosure, I'm not an economist, but I've read a lot about it, and I've talked to a lot of economists who really have no dog in the fight. They're just, this is basic economics. And the left keeps forgetting it too. So the progressives on the right, and it is progressive, the tariffs are a progressive policy, and it's coming from these people on the new right. They intentionally say they are not conservatives, they're populists. They've kind of forgotten the basic rules of economics, or they think the basic rules of economics don't apply. It's the same sort of way that on the left you had modern monetary theory. Remember, modern monetary theory was you've got all these people saying that you can spin and spin and spin and spin and it's not going to provoke inflation. And it will eventually provoke inflation, but the way you get out of the inflation is you jack up taxes on the wealthy. Well, we got the inflation. They didn't jack up taxes. It was kind of obvious this is where all of this was headed. It's basic economics. And again, this isn't hard. It's basic economics. It's supply and demand. And the government did dump a bunch of money into the economy. It overstimulated the economy. It did drive up inflation. But tariffs have raised prices. And to the extent that companies can't raise prices because you'll stop buying their products, they're going to cut wages, they're going to cut profitability, they're going to slow their earnings, they're going to cut back dividends, and it will have a cascading effect into the economy beyond your prices going up. You may be invested in a lot of companies that have dividend stocks. They may cut their dividend or their future profitability. They may stop hiring people. They're laying people off. We know the economy actually is minus 911,000 jobs we thought it had. The progressives on the right have forgotten some of the basic rules of economics. The progressives on the left have as well, and there's a very, 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 very funny story. I could have told you this was going to happen, and in fact, the same economists who have been warning about tariffs said this would happen. So in New York City, there's a program that if you build buildings with 100 apartment units or more, workers have to be paid $40 an hour. The new program, 485X, replaces a similar program called 421A and requires developers of buildings with 100 units or more to pay workers $40 an hour. If you stay under that, You don't have to pay them as much per hour. What do you think is going to happen? I mean, logically, you would think if I build 100 units, suddenly I got to pay workers $40 an hour instead of $20 an hour. Why not build buildings that have 100 units? This is from Bloomberg News. There's an unmistakable trend across New York City. Real estate developers are seeking to construct buildings with exactly 99 units. No more, no less. In the past 4 quarters, 28 such permits were filed, more than double the total from the previous 16 years combined, according to city data analyzed by the Real Estate Board of New York. To those in the industry, there's no question what's behind the pileup at this precise number. A new tax program for real estate developments that require higher worker wages for buildings with 100 or more apartments. Last year, the New York legislature passed 485X, which allows developments in New York to receive a tax break if they include a certain number of affordable housing units. It replaces a similar program called 421A that expired in 2022. However, the new program requires developers of buildings with 100 units or more to pay workers at least $40 an hour, a mandate far more strident than the prior one. Developer Anne Marie Gilmartin is a case in point for the results of the program. She once envisioned a pair of 400-unit rental towers on a New York City lot, but she's now considering as many as 6 smaller buildings, a patchwork of projects that ultimately would deliver fewer apartments. The revised plan would take longer to execute and cost more per unit, but Gilmartin said this is the more financially viable option for her. Again, the revised plan would take longer to execute and cost more per unit, but it's still cheaper than the wage increase. This is not rocket science. It's basic economics. The wage requirements are a huge burden. We'll build less housing less quickly, and it's less financially viable. Frankly, we just have less ability to address the housing crisis. So New York is making it harder to build affordable housing by forcing developers who build affordable housing to pay higher wages than they would otherwise have to. The logic of the insane asylum at work here. Basic economics is not hard. Learn the supply-demand curve. It's not hard. Understand that people work in their best interest, not in your best interest. When you tell someone that if you build a big building, you have to pay higher wages, guess what they do? They build multiple smaller buildings because it's usually economically more viable for them. It's not hard stuff. We have gotten to a point where we've forgotten so much. It's like, I'm going to go there, and I'm going to do it as least insulting as possible. I don't want to argue with you over vaccines because I agree with you. Something like the Hep B vaccine for babies, it makes no sense to give a baby a Hep B vaccine. But the MMR vaccine, the polio vaccine, the smallpox vaccine saved a lot of lives. Polio and smallpox are virtually eradicated. And so we've gotten to a point now where people are like, I don't really think the polio and the smallpox vaccine really do much good. Well, you can say that because you weren't alive in the world before those vaccines. And so by being so successful, people have forgotten what it was like before. By being so successful economically, people can forget that the rules of basic economics apply and that there actually are ways the world does work by economic design. It's like Milton Friedman seeing the people using shovels in Europe after World War II, and he asked, why didn't they use bulldozers to dig these trenches? And his host said, well, if they used bulldozers, they wouldn't be able to employ as many people. There would be more people without jobs. And Friedman's response was, well, why don't you give them spoons? They could dig with spoons. You'd have to hire even more people. It was an inefficient allocation of the economy by the government. When the government makes decisions instead of the free market, the government tends to allocate inefficiently because it's not an arm's length transaction, each person for the best. It's the technocrats thinking they know best. And in New York City, the technocrats thought they know best, and the result is they are causing, amplifying, adding to a housing shortage. And in Washington, the progressives on the right decided that, well, let's forget the basic rules of economics when it comes to tariffs. And as a result, well, companies are cutting earnings, laying people off, not seeing profit gains. And, well, prices are going up for people when it comes to certain groceries, when it comes to clothing, when it comes to furniture. I mean, everybody said this stuff would happen. It's happening. It's just the basic rules of economics. People wanted to forget. On the left, it was modern monetary theory, and on the right, it's tariffs. Basic economics, you're not going to change it. Can we talk about quality for just a minute? Because I can tell you, as I'm updating some furniture in my house that's lasted a very long time, it pains me to see all the cheapy disposable furniture where you're buying cheap stuff that you replace more often. You're actually losing money. It's like people who go out and they buy very cheap sheets, but at the same time, there are people who think they've got to throw thousands of dollars at bed sheets. I actually know someone who spent $1,500 on sheets. My Bull and Branch sheets, they've lasted longer than that guy's sheets, and they're super soft now. They're not the highest thread count, no, but they're organic cotton, and they're long-lasting, and they get softer over time. Feel the difference an extraordinary night's sleep makes with Bull and Branch. Get 15% off plus free shipping on your first set of sheets at bullandbranch.com/Eric. That's Bull and Branch, BOLLAND, branch.com/Eric, ERICK. Save 15%, unlock free shipping, exclusions apply. Welcome back. It's Eric Erickson here. Be patient on the phones with you. I want to take time, and I don't have time in this segment because I went long in the last segment. It's funny. I got a text message from a friend who said, "Would you shut up about tariffs? That it's really not having an impact on the market, and it's not in the data." And I know a lot of you feel that way. And then I got a text message from a friend who says you're 100% correct. The toy industry is getting hammered and having to raise prices because of it. It's kind of choose your own adventure right now, isn't it? I kind of follow the basic rules of economics. And thus far, the basic rules of economics haven't really led me astray. But boy, it can certainly start a firestorm with people. When we come back, I want to move on from economics to events because events change things. I say that all the time. I think it was Harold Macmillan was the Prime Minister of Great Britain who was asked by a young man after a big conservative sweep what would change things. And he said, events, dear boy, events change things. And we had this wild situation late last night. I was at a Braves game. They did not do well against my Cubs. That's okay, though, because I love the Cubs. I have always loved the Cubs. I love the Braves, too. And it was kind of like, how do I root this game? But nonetheless, they didn't do well last night. It was my daughter's first baseball game ever. And the Cubs did not do well, but she likes the Cubs, too. So it's okay. I do love them both, nonetheless. While I was sitting there, got word that the Russians had invaded Poland, except it wasn't so. I want to talk about that when we come back. First, I got to tell you about Americans for Prosperity. I've actually got to go do an event for AFP in Vermont, of all places, next month. I've never been to Vermont. Thanks to AFP, I get to go up there. They want you to take a step for freedom in your community. One small step for freedom in your community. If we all do it together, 250,000 of us, we will have taken 250,000 steps for freedom in this country and put this country on a better path than it might currently be, more committed to our founder's vision in time for the 250th anniversary of the country. If you want to find out how you can participate, go to afpvolunteer.com. afpvolunteer.com. You sign up with AFP, and you can not only join the largest leading grassroots group in the country that happens to be conservative, but you can also take a step for freedom to improve your community, and I hope you'll consider it. AFPvolunteer.com. AFPvolunteer.com. Sign up with Americans for Prosperity today. Become a conservative activist. Take steps for freedom in time for our nation's 250th anniversary. AFPvolunteer.com. In business, they say you can have better, cheaper, or faster, but you can only pick two. What if you could have all three at the same time? That's exactly what Cohere, Thomson Reuters, and Specialized Bikes have since they've upgraded to the next generation of the cloud. Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. OCI is the blazing fast platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs, where you can run any workload in a high availability, consistently high performance environment and spend less than you would with other clouds. How's it faster? OCI's block storage gives you more operations per second. Cheaper? OCI costs up to 50% less for compute, 70% less for storage, and 80% less for networking. Better? In test after test, OCI customers report lower latency and higher bandwidth versus other clouds. This is the cloud built for AI and for all your biggest workloads. Right now, with zero commitment, try OCI for free. Head to oracle.com/Erickson, Erickson. That's oracle.com/Erickson. Welcome back. It's Eric Erickson here. 877-973-7425 is the phone number. Before I move on, I want to take Sandra's phone call. Welcome to the show, Sandra. How are you?
Hey, Eric. Thanks for taking my call. I'm great. I'll be brief. I wanted to follow up on your lack of facilities for those in need of mental health. Everybody forgets that these guys that are roaming the streets and they're all crazy were once young boys. We have good friends who have a potentially budding problem going forward in their son, who is 13, severely behaviorally disordered. They have no facilities for him in Georgia. These are smart people. They can find help if they need it. The closest place they have for him is in Colorado, and they're not able to pick up and move to Colorado to get the help he needs. But going forward, I mean, this is where the problem starts. Families that don't know how to get help for these kids that grow up to be violent. He's violent now, this one, and she's having great difficulty caring for him at home, but there are no alternatives.
You know, so I'm actually really glad you called, Sandra. I don't know this firsthand from my family, but very close family where they adopted a child, had been born. The mother was a drug addict, among other things. They adopted the child at birth, and she's now grown into a teenager and has developed some serious pathologies, and they are really struggling as a family and trying to find outlets near them. The nearest they could find, I think, was in North Carolina. And they're essentially having to leave their kid at a facility for their own safety and her own. And then I've got another friend of mine whose son was actually abused. It was, I don't want to go into the details, but it was a particular sort of abuse. And the closest facility anywhere to really help get him the treatment he needed was in Louisiana. And it was lots of long commutes back and forth, and you were not alone in this situation. It's all over the country, and we, of course, more and more we close mental hospitals, we put people into halfway houses in communities, or we leave them on the streets, and it's really unfortunate for everyone. And it's not compassion. It's like think about the homeless people in Austin, Texas, where the local government essentially referred to it as urban outdoor living, urban camping, instead of homelessness. And then what did they do? What was the compassionate thing the left did? They changed it from homelessness to unhousedness. Think about that. Just let's ponder for a moment. Compassion to the left has been to just change names. Remember, this is part of postmodern Marxism. It's actually part of critical theory. Chris Rufo did a lot to raise people's awareness about critical theory, and I think we have moved on too much too quickly from critical theory, because one of the key components of critical theory is that if you change language, you change reality, and that's part of postmodern Marxism, but it is baked into the equation of critical theory. And the AP style book goes along with it, so homelessness became unhousedness. You were no longer homeless, you were unhoused. And that was, in the left's framing, the problem was that you just didn't have a house. And that homelessness was a stigmatizing word. And you know what's going to happen is unhousedness is going to be a stigmatizing word. I was listening to a comedian a while back, and he was making a joke, but it was actually a real point that He was talking about his mother using the R word. Y'all all know what the R word is for a mentally disabled child. And he was explaining to his mother that we now refer to them as special needs kids. And his mother was asking him, why do we refer to them as special needs kids when, well, they're the R word? And he says, well, people find the R word offensive. And his mother laughed and said, well, we started using the R word because the word before that people found offensive. And so they moved it to the R word from the M word. Comes close to being Mongolia. And so people stopped using the M word and they went to the R word, and now we're at special needs. And he's like, and you know what? She had a point. It's true. At some point, we'll refer to them as ice cream lickers. And everybody laughed, but it was a point. And we just keep changing the words. If that's gonna change the stigma, then really we're not fixing the underlying problem. And the underlying problem is we have people with mental health, and the leftists decided it's not compassionate to keep them locked up where they're not a harm to themselves or society. And now we have this young lady in North Carolina who's been murdered because the left decided in the name of loving their neighbor, they needed to let a schizophrenic criminal on the streets where he could kill the Ukrainian refugee because that was all somehow compassion. It just blows my mind. It really, this is where the left, they have forgotten how to govern and keep people safe. Actually, they keep the bad guys safe, just not the good guys. Now, I want to talk about events. Harold Macmillan, he was a British prime minister, conservative prime minister. He was allegedly one of Queen Elizabeth's favorite prime ministers because they would gossip together about aristocratic society in Great Britain. Won a sweeping victory for the conservatives in Parliament, and a young reporter came up to him allegedly and asked him, well, what could change the dynamic? And he said, events, dear boy, events. One of the long-time sayings, I've got a lot of sayings. I should put them on coffee cups or something. People are stupid. Events change things. Events do change things. Last night, I met the Braves game with my daughter. And by the way, can I just say to those of you who work the stands for the Braves, I don't know if it's volunteers or they get paid. I assume they get paid. They're there every game. They were so nice to us last night. My daughter had never been to a game before. I splurged on good seats, and everybody was just so nice to her. My daughter's like my wife. She doesn't like crowds, and obviously it's very crowded, and they were so nice to her. And we're sitting at the baseball game, and I love going to baseball. We were both talking that neither my kid nor I like to go to NFL games. I love to watch the NFL at home, but I've now been to several NFL games, and I'm just miserable at them. You cannot see the action as well as you can on your TV. I don't like to go to an NFL game, but man, a baseball game, I would far prefer to be at the stadium to watch the baseball game than watch it on TV. I find it boring to watch it on TV. Now, the pitch clock has made it much better. I was skeptical of the pitch clock, but I got to say I'm a big fan. You now know you're going to get out of there in like 2.5 hours instead of a possible 4-hour game. In any event, I'm sitting there last night, and suddenly I see on social media that the Russians have attacked Poland. The airspace has been shut down. Fighter jets are in the air. Like, what the heck is going on? Now, my first reaction was it was several pro-Ukraine Twitter accounts. And they were saying the Russians have bombed Poland. Surely NATO must do something. I was like, wait a second. Are these people just making stuff up trying to start a war? Well, yeah, kind of. That's what happened. So the Russians invaded Polish airspace last night. Some drones sailed through Polish airspace on their way towards Ukraine. One of them apparently crashed, was not shot down, as initial reports said, but crashed onto a roof, did some damage, not a lot of damage. And, well, people wanted war. So for those of you who don't know, Western Ukraine borders Eastern Poland. Poland has, of course, been invaded repeatedly in history. The Poles are our staunchest allies in Eastern Europe. The Poles are awesome people. By the way, if you are Polish and you're listening to this program, and for some reason I have actually, I can tell on my live stream, I have listeners in parts of Poland. I love the Poles. I love Poland. I think the Polish people are some of the greatest people. Polish food is fantastic. The Poles are fantastic. They're wonderful human beings, and they love Ronald Reagan and the United States. And how can you dislike the Poles? And the Russians have been using Belarus as a launch pad for drones into Ukraine, and they sailed over eastern Poland, some of them. One of them apparently crashing. Maybe it was shot down. Depends on who you listen to. But there were some loud voices on social media saying, it's war, it's war, it's war, we got to have war. No. Wasn't war. It was probably intentional, however. It was probably Vladimir Putin probing defenses. But just think about this. Yesterday morning, as we were starting the show, there was white smoke over Doha, Qatar, showing that the Hamasniks have a new leader. Normally it's you get white smoke out of the Vatican, you get a new pope. You get white smoke out of Gaza or Qatar, you get a new Hamas leader, because the Israelis have bombed them. And they did a strategically targeted strike in Qatar against the Hamas leadership and apparently decapitated the leadership of Hamas. And now literally every single person who was complicit in planning the October 7th attack has been killed. Every single one of them on the list that Israel produced after the October 7th attack, they're all dead now, as of yesterday. Now, the irony here, for those of you who missed the subtext, is that Qatar actually funds terror regimes around the world, and Qatar is not good. Qatar is actually not our friend, though we treat it as our friend. But, and this is a big but, even privately, the Qatari government has signaled that Hamas has gotten out of hand. And the Qataris themselves were trying to de-escalate the situation in Israel and couldn't. And the rumor has been afoot now for a couple of months. You can go look online. The Qataris were trying to find a diplomatic way to get the Hamas leadership out of Qatar. They no longer really wanted them, but they didn't want to cause problems for themselves or others by booting them. But they would really have liked them to go somewhere else. And now Israel has taken care of the situation for Qatar and done Qatar a real solid favor. So we're probably not going to get some major escalation there. As of now, we're not going to get some major escalation in Eastern Europe with NATO. But this is a reminder that events can change things very quickly. We could wake up tomorrow to the news of China's invasion of Taiwan. We really could. Events change things. We could wake up tomorrow and have a stock market crash. We could. There's enough underlying weakness that people could suddenly decide the stock market's overinflated, except, the S&P 500, you take out the top 10 stocks, it's really not doing much. It's not really that the stock market's overinflated. It's that about 10 companies are overinflated. But it could happen. These things can happen overnight. Events can change things and set new dynamics. And just think about this. It is September 10th, 2025. On September 10th, 2001, New York City was getting ready for the next day's mayoral election. The stock market was humming along. Everything was fine. On September 10th, 2001, there were no events changing the trajectory of the world. George W. Bush was polling not great, trying to figure out his domestic legacy, doing No Child Left Behind and Medicare Part D, trying to find a way to work with Democrats who had taken control of the Senate because Jim Jeffries flipped to the Democratic Party. The president the next morning would be on a plane going down to Florida to read a book to kids, to tout his education agenda and his commitment to literacy. People would be wrapping up their day's work in the World Trade Center, figuring out what they needed to do the next day, taking their meetings, going out for drinks after work, headed home, and then getting on their train on September 11th to go to work. Nobody seeing what was coming. Events change things, and they can do it in the blink of an eye. People don't think about it. The Russians yesterday sent drones into Poland by design or by accident. It did not start a war. The Israelis bombed Doha, Qatar in a strategic airstrike. Did not start a war. We have the producer price data today where people are mixed on whether the tariffs are there or not, and you can see them if you look for them, but so much of it is services, and services are declining. It suggests some underlying weakness, and the good news is it's going to get probably a bigger rate cut from the Fed than people were expecting in another week or two, which is actually a good thing. What will it do? What will tomorrow bring? We do not know. That's why we can take care of today, and that's all we can take care of, because events change things. And the Democrats today are underwater in the polling. They're less popular than Donald Trump, who is not super popular, but more so than them. And tomorrow, well, events could change things. You better prepare for them as best you can. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is Eric Erickson. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, I would be delighted to have you. I got to tell you, and I may spend more time on this in the next hour, President Trump is looking at banning pharmaceutical company advertisements, going back to an old rule. The government used to prohibit pharmaceutical ads, and then they started allowing them. And I've always thought it was a bad idea. And you know that with all the attacks on big pharma, I actually think the best thing for pharmaceutical companies would be to ban their advertisements. I actually do. Because I think it helps fuel the conspiracy theories about big pharma when you see their ads all the time and the pharmaceutical reps in the doctor's offices and stuff. I totally support getting rid of it, and I could stand to use less Cialis commercials on TV. Just me, though. Now, all right, I got to tell you about the Eden Pure Thunderstorm because I had the opportunity last night to use mine again. EdenPureDeals.com is the website, EdenPureDeals.com. You put in the discount code ERIC3, ERICK3 at EdenPureDeals.com, and you can get 3 of them. They are air purifiers, so they get rid of dust, pollen, and the like in the air. They kill 99.9% of bacteria and viruses that go through the machine. But where I really use them, where they really shine, an odor eliminator. They wipe out odor. So I had to use mine last night because, well, I left to go to the Braves game and had used the bathroom, clogged the toilet, didn't realize it didn't flush. And when I got home, it stunk. And, well, the Eden Pure Thunderstorm took care of it. It always does. No odor can stand up to it. I realize that's TMI, but I really did use it. EdenPureDeals.com is the website. The discount code ERIC3, ERICK3 at EdenPureDeals.com.